Well, on a happier note, I did want to talk a couple things about puppies.
Yes.
We'll get away from this heavy topic for a while.
Sorry, guys, it's hard. It's hard not to bring up all the difficult and sad stuff. But
with our PTSD that we have here from caring too much.
Yeah.
So what's really important with puppies that I often have a conversation with people is, so you get a puppy, brand new puppy, 8 weeks of age, and if you guys in Connecticut didn't know, it is illegal for a puppy to leave a mother before 8 weeks.
Yes.
If you ever see that in the paper, whatever, it's illegal. The puppy won't have the correct socialization, etc.
Yeah.
So
6 weeks is usually what people are trying to get rid of.
Yeah,
the puppies.
and
that
you
don't do
need
it.
to wait.
Red flag.
Yes,
Red
you
flag.
have to do 8 weeks. And what's really important at that young age is socialization.
Yep.
What people don't understand is that after about 4 months of age, if the puppy hasn't been socialized with tall men, loud trucks, things like that, they can get really nervous. And it's easier to take a puppy at 8 weeks and shape those behaviors versus a dog that's a bit older.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a puppy that might be a little bit older, it's really a good idea if they've been in a foster situation or that puppy comes up and wants to engage with you. They're not scared sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
And when we talk about socialization and something that will make your puppy happier as well as the veterinary staff is touching their ears, getting in their mouth, touching their paws, restraining them, doing everything you want this puppy to be good at as it gets older, so it's used to it, and with positive reinforcement only. So rewarding good behavior, no punishment.
Yeah.
Else you may have a dog that needs to be sedated to get its nails trimmed, which is something that probably could have been prevented.
Yeah. Traumatic and more expensive again.
Yeah. And one author that I really recommend that everybody reads is some books by a veterinarian called Sophia Yin.
Yes, Dr. Yin.
Yeah, and she has a book called The Perfect Puppy in 7 Days, which is amazing. And I tell people, you got some time, read this. And that will really help you to get that puppy on the right track so you can pull out your hair a little bit less.
Yes.
Owning puppies are not easy.
Correct. And I can't hear Dr. Yin's name without letting the public know that Dr. Sophia Yin was a brilliant colleague of ours who unfortunately succumbed to suicide. And even thinking about her makes me want to cry.
Yeah. And she, no one knew much about her personal life, but she tried. She was a veterinary behaviorist and she did a lot. And I always love to honor her by recommending her books. She's pretty amazing person.
She really did leave quite a legacy behind of trying to help people make sure that their pets were raised and trained and very behaviorally and emotionally balanced, but also how we're handling the animals in a veterinary setting, just, so when we're doing our job, we're not adding to the stress of the situation. Yeah, stress-free is really important. So many people think that, when an animal's back there, they're being roughly handled and they're not being respected.
Well, we can advocate for us,
Yeah.
But if you bring your animal to a practice and you find somebody is manhandling it, that is not appropriate. There are way too many medications that can ease anxiety and stress. And the phrase I usually use, what I tell people is, because people will say, I don't really want to sedate my pet to the vet before you bring him to the vet. Well, the people that have a major dentist phobia and you get a little Valium or Xanax before, that's what it's like.
Yeah.
It something that's a little bit more traumatic, you can get help with. So you should never be in a situation where your vet or the staff is really manhandling your pet.
Yeah.
And on a side note, some pets do better away from their owners.
Their owners, yes.
But your veterinarian should always ask you, is it okay if I take Fluffy out of the room? And if the dog is really struggling with the owner, we could say, hey, we can try it out of the room. Do you trust us to do this? But yeah, no manhandling. That's old school stuff that does not need to be done.
Yeah.
It's a tough enough place for a new dog to come with all the scents. There's other sick animals. They're scared, other scared animals there. Your pet should be treated with respect.
And in my experience as a hospice vet, I sometimes see animals that are 14, 15, 16 years old when I go to that client's home and they admit, they're like, my dog hasn't been to a vet in 15 years.
Mm.
They got spayed. It was traumatic. They freaked out and they never wanted to go back. So I just never brought him back. And, again, this is not a pet parent. When you bring your child to a pediatrician and they're getting vaccinated and they're screaming and yelling and trying to hide behind your chair and crying,
maybe
it's unpleasant, but that doesn't mean you never bring your child back to a doctor
or
ever
you could
again.
try a different experience. I always tell people too, if they're upset with their veterinarian, have a real conversation about it. Say, I was unhappy with this because of this. Usually there's some sort of resolution or reason. And your veterinarian shouldn't make you feel guilty if you don't have all the funds or you can't do all the bells and whistles. They should give you options. And what's really tough is you go to an emergency clinic where they don't know your pet, you're going to have less options. You should always speak with your veterinarian about, that's really not in the budget right now. What can I do to help my pet going forward? So it's very important to have upfront, close conversations with your veterinarian. If you don't feel like they're listening to you, get a second opinion. I do not
absolutely. I love second opinions.
And I don't take
fan.
offense. I don't take offense. My colleagues don't take offense. We're like, if you're uncomfortable with this, and I often recommend it, like, you seem really uncomfortable with this. Do you want to see one of my colleagues? Do you want to go to another practice? And I think that can help to have 2 or 3 people say the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. That reassurance. And it's a form of permission to move forward with treatment. But yes, I agree with you that we need to make sure that we're offering our clients all the options and then not making somebody feel guilty or backed into a corner to choose one. Because I do have clients who reach out to me and they said that, my pet was really sick and I don't think it was done intentionally, but the clinic that we were at were recommending very expensive treatment options and they didn't even put euthanasia on the table as an option, which I don't agree with that. You should be afforded all of your options and then help guide your family to the right decision that works for them and their pet. Always prioritizing the pet's well-being.
As you're talking about making the pet's well-being a priority, one thing I always say to people is we can do this test and we can do that, but should we?
Yeah, is it going to change the outcome
what are we
of
going
what
to do
we're
with
going to do
this
treatment-wise?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if Fido or your cat could raise their little paw and say, this is what I want to do next, there's probably very few animals that would say, I want to go through more treatments.
Yeah. Let's do another round of chemo.
Yeah, that's rather difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we've really hammered on the financial expense of having a pet, but just veterinary wise, because there's a lot of other expenses to consider here. So 1/3 of the costs that people put into their pet is actually spent on veterinary care. So when you think about all the things that we pay for our animals, you would think that the veterinary expense would be a lot higher. So we're talking about food. And again, if you are feeding your animal anything that's not a kibble that has feeding recommendations, which usually are a little bit excessive and make your pets fat, by the way, you should be running that dietary plan by a veterinarian, because there's a lot of stuff out there and recommendations from people who don't know what they are talking about, just like all the wannabe medical professionals on social media. Grooming, huge expense that people don't realize. In the age of doodles and poodle mixes.
It's a lot of hair.
It's a lot of hair and it grows constantly. So what people don't realize, like versus having a Labrador, a retriever, their coat stops growing at a certain limit. It doesn't continue to grow like the hair on our heads. It grows more like our eyebrows. And there's a limit. But when you have a poodle or a hare breed versus a fur breed, their grooming requirements, because you have little ones.
Yeah.
6 to 10 weeks max.
Yeah. And my little dogs, I love my groomer. They go about every 6 weeks. And it's typically between $60 to $70 per dog. Plus I leave a tip. If you're having a big furry breed that takes hours, and also, I want to put a plug in here for groomers. Groomers, that's backbreaking work.
Yeah,
it's
they're
a
awesome.
lot. It's a lot.
A good groomer's worth their weight in gold.
Yeah. And also, that comes into puppyhood too, getting your dogs used to being brushed and handled. And if you let your dog get all matted, the groomer's going to have to shave it all the way down.
And it's painful.
Yeah. They're working
on a painful dog.
Yeah, they need to start with something. But Yeah, and if you're talking about, I mean, that can easily cost you $100+ a month,
Mhm.
even more than that. And then if you're talking about a large breed, so I have small dogs. They eat about and less than a quarter of a cup of kibble a day. How much kibble do your dogs eat in a day?
So Rain, my 90-pound golden, gets a
Yeah.
cup and a half twice a day, and
Okay.
Willow gets 3/4 of a cup twice a day.
Yeah, so that's several cups. I was just looking this morning. I use Purina on my dogs. No, I'm not getting paid to say that either. But for a large breed
Same.
dog, yeah, a large breed dog, the largest bag, like 30-pound bag of Purina, it's $80.
Yeah.
If you have a Great Dane who's eating 6 cups of food a day, like you have to think about that. That's
Yeah.
a lot of expense, and everything
Yes.
is costly now. But even food. I
Yeah.
mean, food, grooming, all these things need to be thought of before so you're not dumbfounded.
Yes. And another thing that I always want to stress is containing your pet.
Oh, geez.
So people get animals and they have to have an environment in which you're keeping them in. First of all, if you rent or lease where you're living and you do not get approval to have an animal and you're going to go get one,
Bad.
or it's clearly stated on your lease agreement that you are not allowed to have one and you
Bad.
go and get one,
That's
we
naughty.
see a lot of rehomings. That's really irresponsible.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time with people who are like, "Oh, I got this dog, and my landlord caught me."
Yeah, you always
Why are
have
you
to be
getting
honest.
caught?
Yeah, you just be honest. And when you talk about containment,
Fences.
that or do you know how much money people could be saved if they just had their dog on a leash?
Yes.
So hit by car, attack from other dogs, etc. So just because you're responsible doesn't mean that everybody else is responsible.
Correct.
And as far as fencing, I know you have some stories. I use invisible fence, which is not foolproof. My dogs respect that fence very much. So for you guys that don't know what invisible fence is, you cannot see the fencing. It's a wire in the ground, and if the dog goes too close to the line, they'll get a beep, and if they go over it, they get a shock. So my dogs are really great, but my dogs are 12 and 7 pounds. The invisible fence isn't keeping coyotes, bobcats, bears, and I've seen a lot of horror stories. Invisible fence, dog gets attacked by a bear, and that's just terrible. So you have to keep that in mind too, as well as what can happen with a built fence. And I
Yeah.
know you have some stories about that too.
Yeah, so in my former home where I did put in a $5,000 plus fencing system to contain my dogs, there was a bear actually on the tree that the fence was up against so it could drop into my yard. So even though I had a fenced in yard and larger dogs, there were wild animals that could seriously harm, if not kill them, that
Mhm.
could get in the fenced in area
Mhm.
as well. It
Mhm.
was like an invisible fence, like there's no protection whatsoever from other animals coming onto your property. And I've also heard some pretty sad stories about a dog that was spooked out of their yard and they got shocked on the way out and then they couldn't get back in because they were anticipating getting shocked again and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And so you have to, having a fenced in yard does not make you shouldn't be complacent and feel
Right.
like you're 100% safe.
Keep an
Making
eye
sure
on
that you're
them out
keeping an
there.
eye on them. Yep. I did mention in a previous episode about clients stacking in wood piles, or they have junk out in their yard up against the fence, literally creating a stairway.
Or they're unaware of how acrobatic their animals
Oh
are.
yeah, I've seen dogs clear an 8-foot fence with no problem whatsoever. There was a great video. I think it was like a German Shepherd or a Malinois, and this guy completed his stockade fencing, and he's like, "Yes."
Climbed right over.
Let the dog out, and the dog comes out, banks off the house, and goes over the fence in seconds. The first time it's out, and it's 8-foot security.
Yeah, that's a lot of money
gated.
in a
Yeah, I was like, what do you do at that point? Put a hot wire like leaning over so the dog can't get up and out? Like it's crazy. So there are some
things happen.
some magicians. I had a dear friend who had a dog that that dog would go out a window. Like I think it actually ended up on his kitchen counter and was going out like a picture window above the sink to get out of the house. And so there are those unfortunate cases. So, but another big expense that you have to think about, crates, dog beds. There's so many things that go into making sure that you're being a good pet parent.
And not only outdoor containment, but indoor containment. Like you're talking about crates.
Yeah.
I had a little dog named Huckleberry who was an awesome dog, but would climb up on counters. Unbeknownst to me, why would you ever think this would happen? 12-pound dog gets on my counter, opens the kitchen cabinet, and eats the chocolate bars out of it. Why would you ever think that that would happen?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's crazy.
And okay, wonder if it's a chocolate toxicity and you don't have insurance and now you got to go to the ER, and that's several $1,000s. So always be preparing for what you think is never going to happen.
Yeah, child proofing that people do when they're going to have a human baby, making sure that the outlets are covered, there's no cords about.
And hampers. Dogs just love to swallow socks. I have no idea why.
Dirty socks, usually, and undies seem to be a fan favorite
Not good.
For many dogs of various sizes. So yeah, like you really should be going through your home and puppy proofing everything. Oh my gosh, since marijuana and cannabis laws have been relaxed, we've been seeing a lot of toxicity, and it's like, all right, well, listen, stoner, just try to remember to put your weed and your edibles away before you go and enjoy your afternoon.
And
because
on that note, we do not care if your dog has gotten into drugs. We're not going to judge you. We want to fix your dog.
And we need to know that there was a consumption of something that was making them sick and what it was. But yeah, because we see that a lot. People come into the clinic, their dog clearly ate something and they won't admit it because they think we're going to call the cops and have them arrested.
It's like, not going to happen. We just care about your pet.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't care if you're showing up in your jammies, whatever you're doing. We are there to take care of your pet.
Yeah, being honest with us will help us be able to save them, though. If you're going to just look us in the face and lie, be like, no, my dog didn't eat anything.
And for you younger people that live with your folks, so I see all the time the grandparents, so they have a 18-year-old or something living with them. They go out with their friends and the dog is just not right. And I've had people come in and I said, this is marijuana toxicity until proven otherwise. And they're like, what? They're like, we don't have that in our house. I'm like, do you have a kid? And they're like, oh.
Awkward.
Yeah. Oops.
I like that.
Whoopsie.
All right. So we talked a lot about expenses and we kind of already touched about, training and behavior. That's another important thing. A lot of people don't realize that when you get an animal and you work with either like, you go to school with them or you hire a one-on-one trainer, they're training you more than anything. They're training you on how to train your dog. I am personally not a big fan of these send-away programs where you get a puppy, you fall in love with it, and then you send it to somebody who's going to teach it for you. But the whole point is to teach them how to be in your life, in your home, in your environment. So I'm not a big fan of those send-away camps. I think those should be for extreme measures when there's a very bad behavior situation going on.
And you should be meeting your pet certain amount of times when
you don't see them for weeks on end. That's not... You're not learning anything.
Correct.
If somebody else is doing all that work with your dog. And I had a family member, unfortunately, they were older and they got a golden retriever that was, they paid a stupid amount of money for this dog because it was supposed to be so highly trained. Well, guess what? It had no idea what to do in their home with their commands. And they kept sending it away for training. I'm like, how about we get a trainer that comes to your home, sees what your environment is like, how you can handle
that.
Exactly. So that's another huge expense, behavior and training, food, toys, containment, and then the 1/3 of that cost going to veterinary care.
Right. And every puppy or young dog should go to a puppy class or a socialization class. There are studies that show that dogs are much more well-rounded. They have less separation anxiety. When they do that first class, they get to be around other people. They get to be around other dogs. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, no, I know what I'm doing. Well, yeah, you may know what you're doing, but maybe your puppy's a little bit more nervous than your last one. Just do the training class.
Yeah, exactly. It's a socialization opportunity. And then so this kind of ties into vaccine schedules. So when you get a puppy, it should have already had at least one round of vaccines. If it hadn't, that's a little bit of a red flag about where you're getting this animal from. If you're working with a rescue organization, it's coming from a foster home, I mean, they should already be able to hand over veterinary records that are easy for whoever you're going to have as your veterinarian to pick up and then help you with your schedule.
Same with the breeder.
Yes.
That puppy should have been examined by a veterinarian to make sure it was okay to be sold or whatever. And on that note, feel free to ask your breeder, can I have a veterinary reference?
Yes.
And just talk to their veterinarian and they'll be like, oh, I really recommend him. And if they say no, that's another red flag.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing with on that note about breeders. anytime you work with a breeder, if they won't let you on the facility and won't let you meet at least the mother, that is a big problem.
Very big.
And it usually screams puppy mill.
Yep.
Or very irresponsible backyard breeding going on.
Mhm.
You should be able to see at least the mother. Oftentimes the father's not on site. He was just used for his services
Yes.
to make said puppy.
Very lucky.
Exactly.
Hit and run.
Or, I mean, there's crazy technological stuff. Like, people are shipping semen all over the country and all over the world for prize stud dogs. So, but if you should be able to see the mother, you should be able to see the litter mates, you should see where that animal is kept, and that veterinary reference is key. Because when you go to adopt or purchase an animal, they're checking your references to make sure you're a good person, that you don't have a history of just dumping animals or throwing your hands up and not providing appropriate care or treatment.
Right. And these breeders really shouldn't want to be taking their miniature 8-week-old puppy and sending it across the country and mailing it to you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah,
going on the airplane and everything. That's a little sketchy.
Yeah. I mean,
so look out for those sort of things.
Absolutely. I have some great clients who, we're not going to start debating, purebred breeding versus rescue right now, because I believe there's a place for both in this world, so long as it's done responsibly. But
as you were talking about the vaccine schedules.
Yeah.
So what people really need to be aware of is your pet, when they're a puppy, they got to go to the vet every 3 to 4 weeks to get vaccines. So rabies is required by state law, and a dog has to be, or a cat, 12 weeks of age or older to get a rabies vaccine. So you want to be expecting to go to the vet every 3 to 4 weeks, and they should talk to you about vaccines and what your pet is at risk for. If you're looking at, like, your dog's golden retriever you go hiking with versus a teacup chihuahua that goes on wee-wee pads, is that teacup chihuahua going to be exposed to Lyme disease? Probably not.
Not as as high risk.
Correct.
As somebody
but these are conversations that you should be having. And same thing with preventatives.
Yeah. And so this is the thing, whether you want to say all vaccines are bad or not is irrelevant here, because there is a law that requires us to vaccinate our pet for rabies. And that is because rabies is a zoonotic disease, meaning that animals can give it to us, we can give it to animals, and we can give it to other people.
100%
and it's 100% fatal.
Yeah.
And I know there's some real jerks out there who are like, oh, I one time saw this article about there was this guy that survived rape. Whatever. That's one in millions that you're gambling with. So rabies is 100% fatal, and there's people who recommend holding off on rabies vaccines until the animal is older.
No.
Now, we live in a rabies endemic area, which means that you can just be walking down the street and you will see a drunk-looking raccoon stumbling around in broad daylight. Very likely it could be rabies. It has to be considered the top differential or potential diagnosis. There's other things like distemper, could have been hit by a car or eaten a fermented apple, whatever.
Rabies is high up on there. And then you have a 6-month-old dog. You didn't get the rabies vaccine. Dog slips off leash, gets raccoon.
Exactly. So what happens when there is a exposure to a potentially rabid animal and there's a human involved? That means if that pet who was exposed was not vaccinated, it automatically gets quarantined for a very long period of time, usually not with you if it's not euthanized immediately, because it has to be tested for rabies. And a lot of people aren't going to want to hear this, but I think knowledge is everything. So the only way you can test an animal for rabies is you have to amputate their head and submit the brainstem for testing. There is no other way around it. And so if there's a human life on the line to determine whether or not a person was exposed, that's what the government is going to do. They're going to step in and say, sorry, take your pet, euthanize it, and then submit it for testing.
Yeah.
I don't care what your feelings are about vaccines. This is the fact of what will happen.
And you need to be upfront as a veterinarian with the owners.
Yeah.
So this was a pretty scary story. There was 2 dogs in a home, a large breed dog, a small breed dog, and a rabid raccoon came through their screen door.
Yeah.
So little dog got bit up. Big dog killed the raccoon. They had it tested. Rabies positive.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So the only option for that little dog was 6 months state-approved quarantine owners had to pay for with no human contact Now, let's think about that.
The emotional damage that quarantine period is going to do to that animal.
Or humane euthanasia, which I recommended and was elected. But would you have ever thought that a rabid raccoon is going to come through your screen door? And I believe the last case of rabies in Connecticut, I believe it was a child who got bit by a bat. That came in through the chimney.
Yeah.
So
most people don't even know bats are in their house.
Yeah.
And you can be bitten and it's undetectable.
And what about your your cats here?
Yeah.
Wonder if a bat comes down your chimney.
I wasn't going to tell you this, but there was a dead snake down here this morning that the cats murdered.
Great. Well, snakes can't get rabies, so at least it's not crawling up my leg over here.
But it's just a great example of
you don't know.
Our little Wayne's World setup basement, there's critters getting in, and there's potential exposure is what that means.
Yeah, and if you got a little bat flying around your place, your cat's going to kill it and potentially eat it. And if your cat does not have a rabies vaccine,
so
playing with fire.
Yeah, I have 3 cats. Not one of them goes outside, not on purpose ever. And all of them are up to date on their rabies vaccines. Actually, I recently went and had my annual appointment with Dr. Charlotte, and she examined all 3 of my cats. Arlo's fat. Arlo's fat. Nix she's got epilepsy. We got to be nice.
She's big boned.
The Ginge was perfect. The Ginge was perfect. But so it's very important. Don't get lax on those vaccines because you don't have control over what animals can come into your home. And I had a crazy story about a family with a bunch of little boys, and they let their puppy outside, and they were told by a somewhat holistic leaning practitioner to hold off on rabies until the puppy was 6 months. And
then
that
it
puppy
should
ran
not
out
go
and went
anywhere.
face to face with a skunk that was rabid in their yard.
Done.
And then there's little boys that were potentially exposed. They were really, really, really fortunate. That dog didn't make contact with the skunk, but at broad daylight, literally the kid opened the door, boom, there it is. There's nothing you can
just
do.
Never know. And
when you first get an animal and bring them into your home, especially if it did come from a breeder or a rescue organization, usually you have it's almost like a lemon law period where you can have a veterinarian examine that pet. And if they find anything wrong, that's not an exclusion in a contract, because you'd be surprised how savvy some of these legal contracts have gotten.
Lots of different contracts.
Yep, exactly. Where there's some breeders who have intestinal parasites, Giardia is one of them, or Coccidia in their kennel, and therefore their contract will exclude coverage for those diseases. But when you get an animal and you bring it to a good veterinarian, they should do a very thorough examination, make sure there's not something like a cleft palate, a potential deformity.
Well, let's hope that the breeder
would have caught that already.
Yes, somebody should have caught that already. But yes, we look for all those things.
Yep.
And when you come for that first appointment, you should bring a fresh stool sample.
Yes. Bring in some fresh poop, not a crusty old turd that's been baking in the sun in your yard for a
that
week.
has maggots on it. No, that's too old.
That complicates the results significantly. So.
And don't do like a lot of my clients do and come in and say, oh, I left it in my fridge, because, you're going to make dinner and think you got some sort of dessert in there, and out comes the log in the plastic bag. Happens all the time. Yeah. Forget about it in your glove compartment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Delightful. Anyway,
can you imagine
bring
a
fresh
dinner
stool
at somebody's
sample.
house and you open their refrigerator and there's a turd there?
Yeah, or a urine sample.
Yes, the urine samples. I know. People are so weird about certain things and then pretty lax about others. So when you go to the vet, thorough exam, vaccine schedule. Whether you like vaccines or not, you'll change your mind if you have a dog that dies of parvovirus. And then making sure that we don't have intestinal parasites. So it's very common for young animals or animals that came from a situation that even the best breeders and
it's
rescue
very common
organizations
for
who do a really
puppies
good
and
job.
kittens. Intestinal parasites is
Correct.
pretty normal.
Yeah, and they are in our environment, and it's kind of just what we have to deal with. So making sure that we're on top of certain intestinal parasites in particular, because they are zoonotic. So like I mentioned with rabies vaccine, that means that these parasites can affect humans, and children are very high risk, because your puppy who's got roundworms goes and poops in the yard, your kid's out there playing, and then they put their hands in their mouth and there's some fecal oral contamination. And that's usually how humans acquire parasites from their pets. It's poop sometimes has to get in the mouth somehow.
Yes. Or you're like us and you let your dogs kiss you in the face and they just licked their butt or ate somebody's poop outside. It happens.
Oh, my dogs don't lick me on the lips, so I'm grateful for that.
My bad. Mine do.
Oh, dear.
I probably have antibodies to every parasite there is.
Yeah. So if you want to, get scared into making sure you're being diligent about getting those poop samples checked and getting your dogs on dewormers, look up toxocariasis. Did I say that right? Toxocariasis.
Yeah, that's good enough.
Yep. Or cutaneous larval migrans.
That's bare feet in your yard when your animal has hookworms, and you could get
Yeah. It's
So this stuff is rare. Yeah, it's rare, but it does happen. And you also really have to take this into consideration if anybody in your family is immune compromised, going through chemotherapy, HIV, any sort of autoimmune disease. They might have a harder time fighting this off. And these things that are transmittable, they're microscopic. You can't see them. So when you go to the vet and you say, I've looked in the stool, there's no worms there. We're looking for the eggs, which are very hard to detect. And you could have completely normal dog or kitty stool and have a lot of intestinal parasites.
Correct. Yeah, the animal can be clinically normal. So very important. And when we're talking about other things that can be contagious between pet and human, ringworm.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a worm, people.
We've all gotten that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't say I've ever talked to a veterinarian who hasn't been exposed to it. I actually got ringworm for the first time when I was a kid working at a dairy farm.
Interesting.
The calves always have it, and you see these big gray scaly patches all over their faces, and got it on my arm. So yes, it is not a worm. It is a fungus, but it's contagious. And again, you can have a patient who has it, but it's not obvious, and then everybody else in the house is getting it.
Particularly a problem when there's lots of cats in a house.
Yes, and so there's, again, very, very good rescue organizations and shelters that are doing a phenomenal job trying to take care of animals, get them well cared for, and put into good homes.
Yeah, but and some of these things are, they don't have any symptoms.
Yeah, I've had some clients who are like, well, this awful cat rescue that I got my cat has ringworm, and I'm like, everybody has ringworm this season because of how the climate has been. And so again, don't villainize an organization because your animal has something that is treatable, especially if they are really trying to do a good job and they're going to cover the veterinary cost to treat it.
Right.
So what else do we have here?
Prevention. Let's talk a little bit about prevention.
Yes.
So especially in Connecticut where we are, where it's Lyme disease central.
And it has become far more it's spread across the United States. When we first started practicing, got into vet med, New England was pretty much the only hot spot.
Yeah, and what was really interesting when I went to veterinary school, they were just seeing it go through Canada up to Prince Edward Island, so they didn't have a lot of Lyme disease. Anyway, there is preventatives for all this stuff: fleas, ticks, heartworm spread by mosquitoes, and intestinal parasites, which you're talking about, which most animals get from other dogs, or you can get things like Giardia from wildlife. So on that note, pick up all your pet's poop and get rid of it, so it's not spreading from one thing to the next. But there are all sort of good preventions out there. And you should have a conversation with your veterinarian about what's important to you. And I don't ever force a client into prevention. It is their chemicals. They're well studied, but the scary thing in veterinary medicine is a lot of these studies only went on for 7 months or so. And if you're starting a puppy on a prevention that is going to be on maybe for 5 years, we may not know a lot about that information. But there are tons of preventions that have been out for a very long time that are very, very safe. Yeah. And things like heartworm. So heartworm spread by mosquitoes. And I have a lot of people that say, I'm not going to use that. My dog's not at risk. They don't go outside. Okay, so where does your dog go to the bathroom? Oh, outside, but he's only in the yard for a couple minutes. Now, I don't know about all of you guys out there, but I've found mosquitoes in my house.
Yes.
So one mosquito bite. So a mosquito would have to bite an infected animal and then bite your animal and bite your dog. And the cost to treat heartworm disease is so costly, so risky, and you could really prevent it in your pet for probably $15 a month. Yeah. And that's important. And a lot of those heartworm preventions come with an intestinal dewormer. And now we have tablets that have everything in one. So flea, tick, heartworm, intestinal parasites. So I particularly use that on my pets. But
Same.
yeah, and what's amazing is if a client comes in, their dog is itchy or is having diarrhea, I can almost 100% rule out mange because these products cover mange, which is a mite from wild animals. I am very much less suspicious of tick diseases if people are using this on time. So I feel like I have to do far more conservative testing than with other pets who are on prevention are not vaccinated correctly.
The list of possible problems and where the problem's coming from is much longer.
Yeah, and your veterinarian shouldn't force you into using a prevention if you're not comfortable with it. But keep in mind these natural things that we use, they have not been studied.
Correct.
So at least the medications I'm recommending, they've gone through studies to see what happens. If you're getting some sort of essential oil or something, that we don't even know what's in that. Yeah. So keep in mind,
and it can be toxic, especially to cats.
Absolutely. And
a list of toxic essential oils.
So just keep that in mind. And if you're not going to use prevention, then you got to be really careful about scouring your pet for ticks and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So unfortunately, as a hospice veterinarian, I have euthanized far too many young and otherwise healthy animals because they were in kidney failure secondary to Lyme disease.
It's the worst.
It's called Lyme nephritis. What happens is this bacteria is shaped like a little spiral corkscrew. And when an immune system sees it, we produce antibodies, which is our way of attacking it and trying to defeat it. And they can all start locking on to these weird shaped bacteria, and then they form these big globs, big on a microscope technically, I guess. And the place they get lodged is in the kidneys.
And they ruin them.
It destroys their kidneys. And so I have never in my career euthanized an animal because of a vaccine reaction to Lyme disease or from a reaction to a flea and tick product that was reputable.
Right.
Ever in my career. Where I've done dozens of Lyme nephritis euthanasias.
I don't have research on this, but anecdotally from when I was a technician, the past 20 years. So I've seen the Lyme vaccine get so much better. And any animal that I've seen with Lyme nephritis, it's not vaccinated.
Correct. Same.
And they're very young.
Yes.
These are, and honestly, you can't do anything with kidney disease with Lyme. You're just going to need to let your animal go, often at 2, 3, 4 years of age. Yeah. So that's very important in this area to keep in mind.
Yeah. Because we live in an age of access to information, people are not trained the way we were, going through so much education about how to conduct appropriate research. And this is a whole other episode that I'm planning on doing, because so many people say, well, I looked it up, I educated myself, I've done my research. But what people don't understand is this thing called confirmation bias. So if you want to learn about the Lyme vaccine and you Google in that search engine bar why Lyme vaccines are bad, and the hits that you get, the response, like the different pages that you're directed to are completely different than the ones if you Googled how Lyme vaccines work, which will include the risks associated with the vaccine, but it's also not opinion-focused nonsense.
Correct. Not educational based. Yeah. People that said my dog started limping after the Lyme vaccine or my dog died after any vaccine. So did you get a big necropsy done, meaning looking at your animal and the
cause of death.
And just looking at the animal under the microscope, every single organ, just because you see something terrible happen with your animal, it's associated around the timing of a vaccine, doesn't necessarily mean that's the cause.
Yeah. And every single decision that we make for ourselves, for our humans in our lives and our animals, it's a weighing of risks and benefits. Nothing is 100% safe. People don't know that you can kill yourself from drinking too much water.
Yep. Or just taking too many Tylenol.
Exactly. So nothing is 100% safe. Everything in moderation. And when you live in an area where there's a lot of Lyme disease, and like I said, it's all over the country. It's not just in New England. So this is something that applies to everybody. And you can insert any scary disease that's transmitted via bugs or insects. you have to say, is it worth the risk of my pet potentially dying of kidney failure prematurely? Or is it, or a potential vaccine reaction, or giving a flea and tick product that maybe one in a huge number of animals might have a reaction to? And I like to use this example as well. There's a lot of people that have an allergy to an antibiotic. Penicillin or amoxicillins is a really great example. There are people who have died, ceased to exist on this planet because they had an allergic reaction to an antibiotic.
It's also saved a lot of lives.
Exactly. And so unfortunately, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. There's going to be that one case that makes you want to, like, I don't like this because I heard that one dog got really sick off of this product. Well, first of all, was that product counterfeit?
Yeah, where'd you get it?
Which is what we're dealing with now.
Mm-hmm.
So when I remember when Seresto collars became a thing. Again, I'm not promoting this product whatsoever, but what I'm talking about is how good counterfeit drugs have gotten. And so, you know, a Seresto collar came in a tin can, and if you purchased it, it was usually, I'm so far, it's like $65, $75, somewhere in that range. There were people who were finding them on Amazon for $30, $40. If it sounds too good to be true, it likely is.
Mm-hmm.
And the last clinic I worked at, the owner of the practice came in. He's like, you guys got to see this. And he held up a counterfeit can of Seresto with a real one.
Very similar.
It was scary.
Right.
They had a fake lot number and serial number on it.
And it looks identical.
Identical.
And keep in mind, if you're getting products from the vet, they get them from the distributor.
Yeah.
We're not getting products
So
on
they're guaranteed.
Amazon or something. Yeah, they're guaranteed. So that's important because there's counterfeit stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
And we're talking about terrible consequences of Lyme disease. And a lot of people will say, well, my dog is vaccinated against Lyme disease. I'm not going to use a product that will kill ticks. So there are many other tick diseases that unfortunately we do not have any vaccines for.
Ehrlichiosis.
Yeah.
And now we have that stupid amblyoma
Yeah.
the Lone Star tick, which can make you allergic to beef. I don't like that.
Oh, yeah.
Did you hear about that? The
You'd be in
alpha-gal
trouble.
syndrome?
No, I didn't.
'Cause you
I'll
don't
have to
eat
check
beef.
this. Yeah, no. But all these other diseases that typically can be prevented with the good products that are out there now.
Yeah. And so, again, when you are going against your veterinarian's recommendation or choosing not to purchase a product from your veterinary hospital, you are potentially taking a risk of getting a product that is fake.
And that's okay if you know the risks and you've had the conversation.
Yeah.
But listen to somebody educated about it.
Yeah. And so a lot of complaints were being made against the producer of Seresto collars as being dangerous. And I do not doubt, after seeing that side-by-side comparison of the fake can versus the real one, how many reports were actually being made against a fake product.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the hysteria breaks out, like, oh, Seresto collars are so dangerous, they're killing all these dogs. And it's like, well, the real ones probably saved so many more lives, and now you villainized it and you jumped on a bandwagon, and you're convincing other people to not use a preventative product.
Because we only want money. That's why we're recommending that we get the Seresto from the vet clinic.
So sometimes it's a difference of dollars, mere dollars, like $5 to get something from an online pharmacy versus to get it from your veterinarian's own pharmacy. And a lot of vet hospitals now do have an online pharmacy.
Yes.
That is legit.
Trustworthy.
And they are making sure that the products that they are getting through that pharmacy are QA, QC, quality assurance, quality control. And that is so important. So again, you might think you're doing your research. It might seem like a screaming good deal. You might want to be like, oh, you know, heartworm prevention's really bad. And if you're taking ivermectin and saying that, it's a little questionable there.
And when these products are guaranteed, there are a lot of clinics where if your animal has been vaccinated against Lyme disease or on this product and they happen to get exposed to a disease, because like we said, nothing's 100%, that the vaccine company or the drug company will pay to do treatments.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's a guarantee that you get, and people don't know that.
Yeah, and so when you have that choice and you're dragging your feet over $5 of supporting your veterinarian and their clinic versus some rando online pharmacy who you don't know where these products. It's not just about counterfeits, but storage matters.
Yeah.
So when you look at a box of something like a flea and tick preventative, it says it should be stored at room temperature. Some of these massive wholesale online pharmacy places, they're getting these huge shipments and they're sitting like just baking
Who
in a
knows?
trailer outside.
Yeah.
And at that high temperatures could be negating the effects of the drug that's in that product. Storage matters. We see that with foods too, where, you've got kibble in a bag, but that bag has been sitting in a 100-degree trailer for weeks on end before it actually got into a climate-controlled room for storage and sale. And so people don't think about stuff like that, and it matters. And so if you are left with a decision to purchase something from your veterinarian or an online pharmacy, please support your veterinarian. Trust that they're going to be backing up that product and making sure it's safe.
And it gets very frustrating when people say they're just recommending this to make money.
Yeah.
So I believe veterinarians would make far more money if they didn't make these recommendations, because these diseases are very costly to treat, and your pet could die during treatment.
Job security.
Yeah, and then you have to do much more testing because they're not vaccinated, they're not on prevention. So that's not it.
Yeah.
Like, we genuinely want the best for your pet, and
Absolutely.
that's the way we are. I'm sure there's bad apples out there.
Of course, there's
but
always bad examples.
The majority of the veterinarians I know, they don't want to see your pet die from something that was totally preventable.
Yeah, and so when I first started this podcast, I felt like I was in a unique position because I haven't been employed in a hospital setting for years, since before the pandemic. And I have never owned my own practice that sold any products. I strictly do hospice. Back when I was doing more wellness, acupuncture, and chiropractic care, I had a prescription pad. I didn't carry anything. There was no kickbacks whatsoever. I don't sell anything. And so when I make a recommendation for a product or a food, that's because I give it to my animals. Because I believe in it. The science
I just had a
behind
conversation with somebody the other day. I said, I often do not make a product recommendation unless I've used it on my own
Correct.
pets.
Absolutely.
Or I've seen even newer products before I recommend them. I will often wait months and months till it's been out, because you never know what's going to happen.
You recently made a recommendation for me to make a change because I don't do general practice. I'm not up to date as you are with the latest and greatest, the newer products on the market. And when I was looking for my flea and tick and heartworm prevention, you recommended something that was new to me. And I was like, do I want this? And you're like, yes. And
You
because you're one of my friends, I trusted that advice. And so I'm using it because somebody that I believe in, who has a very similar philosophy of practice of mine, said, yeah, go ahead and switch to this product.
Well,
and
thank
I really
you for trusting
appreciated
me.
that. Of course.
You're welcome.
So we've really hit that one home, making sure that we're protecting our pets. So when you have a new animal and you're wondering, especially if you haven't had pets before or it's been a little while, especially since veterinary medicine has completely changed in a very short period of time. We talked about how getting a same-day appointment used to be pretty easy. Finding a veterinarian, if you didn't have one at all, used to be pretty easy. Not so much the case anymore. So when you bring an animal into your home and you're wondering, like, what happens if I have a potential emergency, or what can these potential emergencies look like? Puppies eat everything.
Things that can kill them very quickly.
Yes, absolutely. And so when I got Willow, was a 8-pound little ball of adorable terror. It was during a really good mushroom season, and there were mushrooms everywhere. And I lost track of how many times I tackled that puppy to the ground and wrestled her and scooped some slimy, disgusting mushroom out of her mouth, and then frantically was looking up online like what I should do. Do I need to go rushing to an emergency clinic? And unfortunately, you can have toxicity to the point of death. And so we got to think about stuff like that.
Right. And veterinarians are not privy to all the human medications. So we always recommend some sort of pet poison control hotline. Yeah. And what's really important, if your pet gets into a medication or some sort of substance, please save the packaging.
Yes.
It'll have what the drug is. Typically, if you call a poison control, they can help you through that and say, yes, this is going to be a problem, or this is not. You have to pay a fee for that. Yeah. But if it's a medication that we don't know, it's poison control.
Absolutely. And so if you call your veterinarian or an emergency clinic and say, my dog just ingested this product, we actually are usually going to make a call to, it's usually the ASPCA pet poison hotline. We have to pay for that to get counseled on how to treat the case, whether or not it is a toxicity. We need to know how much your pet weighs, and we need to know when it was ingested, the concentration, and time is of the essence. I can't stress this enough, because when you swallow something and it hits those digestive acids in the stomach, it starts breaking that product down and it starts getting absorbed.
And a lot of times we can make a dog vomit up that product, whether it's a human pill versus food like grapes or brownies or something that may potentially be toxic.
Yeah. And also, I unfortunately recently had a friend whose dog had a confirmed consumption of a human drug that was going to definitely make them sick. And I asked about timing, and even though they were able to make the dog vomit, the concern was what had already been absorbed to the bloodstream. So they had to be fed activated charcoal, which would hopefully, in theory, bind whatever drug was left in the gastrointestinal tract. And then they had to put the dog on IV fluid therapy to make sure that the liver and the kidneys were well hydrated and able to process whatever was absorbed. And so what you really don't want to do is be in a situation where you're like, is this an emergency? And then go think about it for a while.
Right.
Or get on Facebook and then go to your Facebook dog group and be like, hey guys, so my dog just ate a whole bunch of Xanax. What do you think I should do? Don't waste any time talking to somebody.
And keep that in mind if you're in a rural area, you're on vacation or something, like you may be far away. So that's important. And we could do a whole other show about various toxins that we see and what they do, but definitely be prepared for the worst in that sort of situation.
Absolutely. And because I am a veterinarian that has limited ability to help in any situation other really than end of life, I have a lot of family, friends, and clients that when there is a disaster with their animal, they call me. And I'm like, I have to
Better
go
call
to the
poison
vet.
control.
Yeah, I would be throwing my dog in the car and racing to the nearest emergency clinic. So I'm not equipped. And so that's the other thing. Just because you know somebody who's a medical professional in the veterinary world does not mean that you should be calling them up. There are hospitals that are staffed 24/7, meaning those people are being paid to be there and help your animal in that emergency. So you're wasting time contacting someone like me who doesn't have a hospital, has no diagnostic capabilities, has no treatment capabilities. You're wasting time for me to tell you, yeah, you had to go to the ER.
Contact your vet or the emergency vet right
Those
away.
are the only two people you should be communicating with in a potential emergency. Now, anything is an emergency if it gives you a gut check and you're not sure and there's potential danger involved.
Yeah, and dealing with emergency, just like a human ER, keep in mind that if it's the weekend, your pet's having a problem, maybe something like an ear infection that's really bothersome but not life-threatening. If you go to the ER and it's particularly busy, a lot of time they only have one doctor on staff.
You're going to get triaged.
Yeah, so you may be sitting there for quite some time, which, yes, can be frustrating, but if everybody else is being seen prior to your pet, then your pet's more stable.
Yeah, that's good news. Again, if you have a potential emergency with your pet, I understand that there can be financial limitations, but you have to do something. Make sure you have that chunk of cash or a credit card that you're not using or a friend or family member who will be willing to spot you, if for nothing else, for humane euthanasia. If you can't afford any other treatment, you can't just let a pet sit in the corner of your house and pass away. You have to do something.
It's never peaceful.
No, it's never. Mother Nature is really, really cruel sometimes. And the worst emergencies that I see are people who start out the conversation with, I was really hoping they would just die in their sleep.
Right. But keep in mind, if humans are on hospice, they're on opiates 24/7. We don't have the luxury of prescribing that because of the opiate crisis. So keep in mind, and animals show suffering in different ways.
Yeah. So just to kind of summarize everything, you got this puppy or this new animal. You know about the financial requirements, making sure that they're safe and contained, making sure that they're trained and socialized.
And grooming.
Grooming. You're doing all the right things for vaccine, intestinal parasite prevention, ectoparasite prevention. just trying to be a good pet parent and knowing when to identify and respond to a potential emergency. So the big thing is making sure that we are not perpetuating our pet overpopulation problem.
Which is huge right now.
Yes. If there was one thing that I feel like we can put all of our energy into and truly make a difference when it comes to animal welfare in this world, it's making sure that we stop unwanted pregnancies, unwanted, unhomed animals, because that's where the most abuse is. No, it's not abuse, but that's where we see the sickest problems, like the worst medical cases, are animals that aren't getting treated, ferals and strays, or animals that are dumped out. So when you bring an animal into your house and home, for anybody who's like, oh, I want to breed this dog because I love them so much, they're so sweet, please don't. Just don't do it.
Just don't do it.
Yeah, they need to be spayed or neutered. And there was a veterinary Facebook group that I was a member of, and somebody combined the word spay and neuter. They called it sputer.
Perfect.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds so wrong, but so right. So sputer your pets, people. And timing is important with that as well. How many people have you seen who are like, yeah, I intend to spay and neuter my animal and not have any more animals out of this? And then there's a whoopsie.
Right. That happens. And there's been a lot of studies on spay and neuter, particularly with large breed dogs and orthopedic problems.
Timing of it.
Yeah. And I don't mind so much if people want to have an intact male, that's fine. You don't neuter your male. But what you need to know, if your dog's not properly trained and there is a female in heat, your dog will go to try to breed her. So that's where we see a lot of dogs roaming, a lot of dogs hit by cars.
Yep.
Just look at all the animals that are found roaming. You'll see on your local animal control site, they are usually males that have not been fixed.
Correct.
So
that instinct is strong.
Yeah. So that's fine. You want to keep a male that has his testicles. Absolutely. You just have to be very responsible about it. Also, behavior problems. Males, as they get mature, will often lift their leg and can mark things. And that can become a habit that neutering isn't going to fix.
Because it's an established habit at that point.
And my personal, this doesn't what everybody thinks, but I personally think people should wait for the large breed males.
Yeah.
Or if they want to keep the males intact, as long as you're responsible. But keep in mind, a lot of training facilities and boarding facilities will not take intact males.
Yes.
So when it comes to female dogs and getting them spayed, there's talk too about medical conditions, etc. But if you let your female pet go through a heat cycle or two, they can get, if you let your female pet go through a heat cycle, they can get mammary cancer. They're more prone to get mammary cancer later in life. And mammary cancer can be very aggressive. So any dog that I've ever seen mammary cancer in, they weren't spayed or they were spayed or neutered late. And there's also what's called, pyometra, which is really terrible because it's when the uterus, which we remove during spaying and neutering, gets infected. It's just a giant tube filled with pus. Fatal if not treated, far more costly than a regular spay. How we would treat a pyometra, spay the dog.
It's an emergency
Yep.
spay.
They're often unstable.
And very sick.
Yes, and it's far more costly.
And risky.
Yes, and I see much more responsibility these days with people not wanting to have, unplanned litters. But say your little female dog gets pregnant and then needs a C-section in the middle of the night where you could lose the puppies or the mom. That's an expensive cost.
Yeah.
So if you want to avoid mammary cancer, avoid pyometra, just spay the dog before their first heat. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I appreciate that because there is some research that's kind of giving people more permission to hold off on spaying and neutering indefinitely, if not being delayed. And I did attend a panel where there was a behaviorist, an oncologist, and a surgeon, an internal medicine specialist, that were all reviewing the research out there about delayed spaying and neutering. And they all said the number one concern has to be pet overpopulation. that has to take precedent over anything else, whether risk of cancer, risk of pyometra.
So that pet always needs to be on a leash or contained.
Correct. And then this is something that is kind of frustrating, but even though we should know better as humans, and this is a no-no, I've had so many people who get a brother and a sister puppy, or they have the mom who's unspayed and they keep a male puppy, and they truly believe, they don't know that those animals will breed, because I've literally had people look me in the eye. Well, they're brother and sister. They're not gonna do the deed. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes, they
if
will.
Only.
Literally, humans who know better do this, which is disturbing.
That's a whole other.
It's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But yes. So if you have intact animals, they do not know better. They will not stay away from each other, and they will break down barriers to get to each other and breed, because that instinct to do so is incredibly strong. But I also would say this. I saw a post recently about a woman who was convinced that spaying her dog was taking away her ability to be a mother, her natural instinct to procreate. And it's like, listen, lady, this is a domesticated animal. This isn't a wild animal. Please. They aren't missing out on anything if you perform a spay and take her ability to ever have puppies away from her. So I can't stress that enough.
Well, on that note, I've heard people say, I want my kid to see the miracle of life. And this was years back, and I had somebody say that, and it was a little cute pity mix. But as we know, a lot of the animals in rescue are wonderful little pity mixes. Yeah. And the owners were like, I want my child to see the miracle of life. And I said, well, why don't you have your child go to an animal shelter where they run out of space and they have to euthanize healthy animals that are less adoptable for more space? That's what your child should be taught.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a hard truth to swallow, but when we run out of room, we run out of room. If people aren't fostering, if people aren't adopting, we have no other options.
Yeah. Well, that is all the time we have for this episode today. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. We're educating people. We're trying to make a difference in the world of animals that we love and have devoted our lives and our careers to.
Based on everything we've been experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. If there's one take-home point that you want to share with everybody, what is it that will have the greatest impact on your career and the animals you work on?
Yeah. So this day and age, definitely pet insurance, or knowing what to do in an emergency financially, what you're going to do, and you need to know right there. And just really picking the puppy or the breed or the size for your lifestyle. So if you're an active person, get an active dog. If you're not an active person, then maybe something with a little less energy.
Get a potato.
Yep, like mine.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.